Hello and welcome to this video. In this video I'll be taking a look at human migration, what it is and why it occurs. So migration is the movement of people from one location to another with the intent of settling either temporarily or permanently. So immigration will be the act of entering another country with the intent on settling temporarily or permanently. But then also we have internal migration, which is that people moving within their country's borders. Maybe they're moving temporarily or permanently, but the point is they're moving within their own country. Then we have a different term that's called emigration, and that is the act of leaving a resident country or place of residence with the intent to settle elsewhere. So when you emigrate, it really is implying that you're making a permanent move. So is there a difference between immigration and emigration? Immigrating is the act of entering a foreign country to live, while emigrating is the act of leaving a country to live in another. So let's take a look at this example. So my grandparents immigrated to the United States, but my grandparents emigrated from Norway. So my grandparents are immigrants in the United States, but back in Norway they are immigrants. So to emigrate means to move out of, and immigrate means to move into. So you immigrate into places and you emigrate from places. And migration is the umbrella term that covers both immigrate and emigrate. So to immigrate is to enter a foreign country to live, while emigrating is to leave a country in order to live in another. So there are different types of migration. Work migration is the most common one, in search of work opportunities or just to get hired in a job that pays you more money than in the country where you're already working. Family migration is also very common. Families want to get reunified with their families, so they move. For example, a wife and 3 kids live in Pakistan, and the husband of the wife lives and works in Norway, but they want to be reunified, so they move to Norway, all of them, the wife and the kids, to join their husband. Career migration, when you're moving up the ladder or you get a promotion, it requires a move across borders in some cases, and that's what we call career migration. Then you have refugees, a person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. An asylum seeker is somebody who is seeking international protection, but their claim for a refugee status has not yet been determined. But if you're a refugee, you have already been recognized under the famous 1951 convention relating to the status of refugee. So that means that you have the right to be protected by a country or a state. Then you have network migration, which is becoming increasingly normal in these days. People move from one country to another because their social network, their friends, their contacts, and their strategic relationships is in another country, so they move because of their network. This is very similar to family migration. And then, of course, you have illegal immigrants who live in a country illegally. They got there illegally, but they're also staying there illegally. Then we have forced migration, which could be slave trade, which has existed for thousands of years. Then we have natural disasters, violence and war, and persecution that forces people to move from one place to another. Then we have droughts, civil wars, slave trade, the famous Atlantic slave trade. But we do have slave trade today. Yes, it does exist still today. It's just simply more hidden from society. You have sexual slavery, sex trafficking, you have human trafficking, and countless other examples that I won't go into in this video. So why do people move? So when we talk about migration, we often think of the push and the pull factors. Some examples are The push factors would be something that pushes you out of a country, and the pull factors would be something that is pulling you because you want to be pulled in that direction. So push factors could be poor medical care, there are not enough jobs around, there are just few opportunities, primitive conditions, maybe some political fear of torture, religious discrimination. Yeah, you get the picture. The pull factors could be maybe chance of getting a better job. Just you want a better life, better living standards. You want more enjoyment. You want better medical care, better security for you and your kids. Maybe you're looking for a husband or a wife, and there are better chances of finding courtship in another country than your own. And so yeah, some push factors could be unemployment, poor safety, high crime rates, crop failure, drought, flooding, poverty, and even war. And some pull factors could be, potential for employment, safer atmosphere in a country, lower crime rates, fertile land. Just basically, they want a better land, and that's really pulling them. They want a better country to live in. Just a quick example, a Norwegian migration to America from 1800s to 1930, 800,000 Norwegians moved from Norway to America in this time period. Some push factors were religious persecution of certain really radical religious minorities living in Norway. There were also some political tension, bad crops, even some overpopulation in some of the towns and cities in Norway, and really limited farming opportunities and general poverty. Some pull factors could be religious freedom in America, economic opportunity and all the rumors of the prosperous opportunities that they had. Also the Homestead Act, which I will talk about in a minute, and just a sense of adventure spurred many Norwegians to move to America. So the Homestead Act was really something that encouraged westward expansion into America, and it was signed into law by President Abraham Lincoln in 1862. And it basically provided settlers with 160 acres of public land. But there was a catch. There is always a catch. In exchange, homesteaders, or people who lived on the land, they paid a small filing fee and were required to complete 5 years of continuous residence before receiving ownership of the land. And this Homestead Act really accelerated settlement of the U.S. Western Territory by allowing any American, including freed slaves, to put a claim up for their 163 acres. And this included people from Europe who came to America and now wanted to be Americans. And here we have a picture of a Norwegian family, actually, who settled in North Dakota. So the American Civil War was from 1861 to 1865. 1 year after the war ends, in 1866, lots of Norwegians come in large numbers to Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, North and South Dakota, and Iowa. I mean, a lot of Norwegians also settled in California, but these states here, which are highlighted with the yellow dot, a lot of Norwegians settled there. And here we can see a number of Norwegian persons who obtained a lawful permanent resident status in the US from 1870 to 2016. So we see that in 1870 to 1879 there was a lot of Norwegians coming, but then from 1880 to 1889 a lot of Norwegians came, and also from 1900 to 1909. So crossing national borders to work is one of the key motivations behind international migration. So work is really one of the top reasons people move. And labor migration accounts for 59% of all migration. That is a lot. So the world population today is 7.8 billion people. And an international migrant is a person who is living in a country other than his or her own country of birth. So as the world population grows, so does the number of international migrants. So there are 3 times more international migrants in 2015 than in 1970. So the international migrant population has been really stable over the last few decades. So it's just around 2 to 3% of the world's population. But it is increasing. International migrants in 2019 are 275 million. That is a lot of migrants. And if we can take a look at this chart here, world population growth, we see that world population has been growing and growing and growing, especially from the mid-1900s. From 1950, after the Second World War, we can see there was just a boom, lots of new babies being born. And we are approximately here today with closing in on 8 billion people, and the estimates are that we will reach almost 10 or 11 billion people by 2100. Some migration patterns in 2019. Of course, the wars are still going on in Syria and in Yemen, sadly. So lots of migrants coming from those places are very likely. And we have economic prosperity around the world. Countries are getting richer, middle classes are growing, and especially the Chinese middle class is exploding, and many of the Chinese are relocating outside of China. So the Chinese middle class, could it be a new migration pattern? So according to McKinsey analysis, the Chinese middle class could reach 550 million in 3 years. And in total, there are 1.4 billion Chinese, and right now there are 50 to 60 million living in other countries. And the Chinese live mostly in Southeastern Asia, but many of them in the United States as well. But they have just recently started to move to Europe in huge numbers. So it will be very exciting to see if this will be a new pattern. Some of the top immigrant destinations in 2019 is actually Europe. So Europe hosts the largest number of international migrants right now, 82 million, followed by North America, 59 million, and then we have Northern Africa and Western Asia with about 50 million migrants. And here we can see a chart for the most popular destinations and the countries that hold the largest migrant populations today. That will be the United States, Germany, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and United Kingdom, and you can see the rest of the list for yourself if you pause this video. Here are some of my sources I used for this video. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you again in the future. Thank you.